Hello to everybody joining us today. My name is Megan Stabler, Vice President of Global Marketing here at BigCommerce, where our platform powers some of the world's most interesting and beautiful e-commerce stores. Today we have two very special guests joining us from Google, Bill Reddy, President of Commerce, and Mary Ellen Coe, President of Google Customer Solutions. And we're going to talk about driving growth with e-commerce, with data, insights, and innovation. Bill and Mary, it's great to have you here. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Megan. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Megan.
Pleasure's all ours. Thank you for joining us. Why don't you both tell us a little bit about yourselves, your story, how you got into this wonderful, amazing, historic growth world of commerce, and more about what your team at Google does and what they're responsible for. Mary Ellen, why don't you start us off with this?
Sure, thanks, Megan. So my team at Google, it's a global team, and our mission is to help small and mid-sized businesses and merchants all around the world get online and use digital tools to grow their business. It's a mission that's very dear and near and dear to me. My father was a small businessman from a family of small business owners. So, working with these founders and entrepreneurs, it's fascinating and really inspiring to see how invested they are in what they do. So it's an exciting place to be.
Incredible to hear that, especially about your family connection and your family history. Bill, how do you match that? What do your team do?
So I lead Google Commerce Payments and the Next Billion User teams. Next Billion Users being, you can think of as our emerging markets effort. And our focus is really on tapping into what Google's best at, user understanding, and using that to help create high quality connections between users and businesses. Similar to Mary Ellen, also come from a family of small business owners, have also been a serial entrepreneur. So deep connection with those who are trying to build, particularly in the small business and startup space. So a lot of personal connection to that, and putting e-commerce building blocks into the hands of the many instead of the few is a hugely inspiring problem to me personally. Have lived that journey for most of my career, and so that's why I'm here at Google, trying to build those things to help others chart their own path on that journey.
Well, speaking of charting your own path, right? We're sort of emerging out of the 2020. We're in 2021 right now, closing on towards the end of the year. So, I think it's going to be fun if we talk about, how would you describe some things? So we'll go through some rapid fire questions for both of you. So starting off, what would be one word that you would use to describe 2020 and your experience?
It's hard to get me to use one word for anything. So I'll give you a phrase, which is a decade of growth in 6 months.
I agree. Mary Ellen?
Yeah, I'm with Bill. We're both talkers. So I've once in a lifetime digitization event. I mean, it's something we've been talking about our team, but it just is a phrase we've coined to reinforce exactly what Bill said. It's just been a phenomenal 12 months of seeing a lot of small businesses and mid-sized businesses use digital tools to really accelerate their growth. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean, the world shifted, and I think each of us also had to adapt based off of our family circumstances. The sort of I call it the live at work experience that we're in nowadays. So, you talk about sort of this once in a lifetime digitization. Bill, you talked about the acceleration there, but what's the favorite item that you each bought online this year? Did you buy something?
Oh, I bought a lot, but about very different things. But I don't think it's that unique. I outfitted a home gym. And I think based on watching category trends, I was not unique in that endeavor.
Yeah, and for me, it was, I'd say the most impactful was our Nintendo Switch that we managed to source. So that provided quite a bit of family entertainment, and then the other one that's a little bit more personally entertaining for me was it was a good opportunity to enhance my bourbon collection. There were plenty of good online opportunities to round that out.
That's interesting you say that. I know another e-commerce leadership person that also did the same thing with their collection of whiskeys. And if you're watching, you know exactly who I'm talking about on this one. Jamison will come through with that. So I know my shopping habits changed. And in fact, my shopping habits didn't change too much from when I joined BigCommerce. I joined BigCommerce at the tail end of 2018. And I made a commitment at that point in time that I would never ever go into a physical store and buy something. And I pretty much done that prior to COVID and the pandemic, and during COVID and the pandemic, and also now that we're opening up, right? I've adjusted the way that I find products, I source, I look at delivery times, and buy my products. But how have your shopping habits changed over the last, I'm going to say 18 months since the sort of pandemic hit us?
Yeah, I think back, Megan, to the amount of time I looked at shoes and blazers for work, right? And then it turned into leisure wear, and I have a wonderful collection of tennis shoes now. So content categories changed pretty dramatically, but also just searching for convenience, doing a lot more online delivery. Not bourbon delivery for me, but wine delivery, and grocery sources from a whole much broader range of providers, and really doing things that I used to do out of home, like we talked about gym equipment or pool toys. Finding new leisure opportunities.
Hmm. Bill, similar things, sports equipment, high heels, shoes.
uh, certainly, more of the shoes and sports equipment. And it's interesting, across many of those, I think we all had this experience that, not only was I searching for a lot of those things, I think it was also really interesting to see the diversity of merchants, really go up that I was sourcing those things from. I think we all had that experience of finding there was no one place that was going to have everything you needed, and so I thought that was particularly in support of small businesses and and startups. The fact that yes, there were a lot of these things we were trying to source, but sourcing those from a much broader set of merchants. As evidenced by the fact that there wasn't any one merchant that could provide all of those things, I thought was a really interesting part of the shopping journey over the last 12 months.
Yeah, well, let's continue on that sort of shopping journey. I sometimes talk about the new muscle memory that people have learned using their tablets and their mobile devices now to find goods. You talked about it in terms of sourcing there, Bill. So I want to continue with you a little bit if we can do. But how have you seen the consumer habits change, right? Because the world has changed, right? Merchants had to go out of their way to source, supply chain, and adjust to deliver or curbside pickup. But what has been sort of the macro level that you've observed from consumer habits?
Sure, yeah. I mean, if you zoom out from that, like I made the statement earlier that there was a decade worth of growth in 6 months' time, which if you look at the amount of e-commerce that increased in the first 6 months of the pandemic, it literally equates to nearly as much growth as was seen in the prior decade. So for all of 2020, retail was up almost 6%, which was the most growth in well over a decade, despite stores being shut or limited during lockdowns. So that means the vast majority of that growth came from e-commerce, which was up 44% last year. So the biggest omni-channel retailers, if you look across those, none of them grew overall sales without substantial growth in e-commerce, and we see that continue even as we have reopening. We see the strength in e-commerce continuing even as fortunately things are able to start reopening in many places around the world. We see the strength of e-commerce continuing through that. So the role of digital, both for e-commerce directly as well as driving into the stores, is going to be really important. I think this is another part of this that retailers now more than ever need to meet customers where they are. So
Right.
the right channel is the one that works for the customer, and more of this is starting to blur. I think with reopening, not only the e-commerce trends sustaining, I think the link between the digital journey and the in-store journey. We've all talked about buy online, pick up in store, and these kinds of things. But I think consumers have also seen just how much the digital part of the experience can enhance their shopping journey. And even as people are looking to go back into stores, they've got a shopping companion right in their pocket. And we expect more of that kind of blurring of those lines. And so, I think that's a really interesting emerging trend as people are, as things are reopening and people are doing more in the physical world again, how that blurring of lines continues.
Yeah, Mary Ellen, have you got anything to add to that in context around, the sort of consumerization, the convenience stuff that's going on, and how consumers, customers are supporting businesses, right?
Yeah. So, Megan, if we look back on 2020, consumers on average were spending 8 hours a day online digitally. So you take that and, you combine that with the, shutdown of physical retailing, and we saw pretty significant changes in consumers being online for sources of inspiration. We had, for example, 70% of YouTube viewers said they actually would buy something that they saw on YouTube and as a source of inspiration. So a lot more, when you think about the characteristic, browsing, which used to be a physical activity, now we're seeing that done much more online. From a convenience perspective, also, significant 100% increase in searches for near me, and things, to Bill's point about curbside pickup, et cetera. So really trying to find, both for safety reasons and for convenience, really changing the way that we integrate online and physical retailing. And then another really interesting trend, much more aligned with personal values. So see a lot of consumers wanting to reflect their personal values in the brands they're choosing and how they're shopping. So supporting local communities, right? One of the things that was really kind of a bright lining through the pandemic was a dramatic increase, 20,000% increase in local searches. And that created a really nice opportunity. And Bill and I see this in our customers, a local physical retailer actually, or restaurateur, getting online to be able to meet the consumer where they are. Also, searches for Black-owned retailers, 9 times the growth in 2020. So a lot of really exciting trends about reflecting values and changing brand choices as well.
Do you think that buying patterns are going to continue in that direction, or are they going to change along the way as consumers react to more uncertainty?
Yeah, so we've talked about as markets settle in, right? We're seeing, countries around the world and even states in the United States in different states of play. We will continue to see more change, and I think agility is one of the key words we're going to talk about, that we kind of continue to advise businesses and merchants. So change is inevitable, and looking at those trends, but I think, to Bill's point, the intersection or the integration of the digital and the physical is going to stay with us, and finding those combinations across the consumer journey.
Yeah, so I think it's important then that we have to acknowledge that merchants need to be aware of all of this, right? The data. I mean, I love the story about the minority-owned businesses and the involvement and making sure that things align to my own personal values. But if we think now about merchants, what do we believe that these trends are now going to do to those merchants? How are they going to impact merchants, and what merchants need to be aware of for their growth going forward? Any advice on that?
Yeah, so we think about, in our portfolio, merchants are incredibly excited about the trends they're seeing. 76% of small business merchants, for example, Megan, we're seeing are using digital tools and are seeing an increased revenue because of that. So I think there's been a broad embrace of these trends because they know it's the best way to ultimately find and serve their customers. Digital tools are kind of here to stay, whether you're a physical merchant and you're moving online, or you're just trying to find new opportunities with new consumers. We're also finding, as an example, smart shopping campaigns, which is Google Smart Shopping Campaigns, is a really nice way. It combines new ways to find your audience in a very simplified, easy targeting, right? So it identifies and optimizes against the customers that are most likely to choose, your products and services. So you can feature, photography of your products or of your merchandise, shows pricing. What's coming soon is video imagery. And it's a really great way to showcase your offering and to meet consumers where they are across YouTube, across Google search, across shopping platform. So we're seeing great success with that for all of our merchants.
Bill, do you have anything else that you want to add to that? Because I know that the sort of line between the digital and the physical retail has continued to blur and will continue going forward. I see some of the big Main Street brands going out of business because they're unable to react. I see other chains that are trying to build out digital experiences into the offline retail and the online retail. What's your advice for merchants in this sort of very hybrid world that we've got?
Well, I think it's full embrace of digital, making sure you meet the customer where they are. On our side of it, we're looking at what are all the things we can do to make that as easy as possible for the merchant to do exactly that. So Mary Ellen touched on a number of these things. Some of the things we've done around making it so that it's free and easy to make your entire inventory available on our surfaces for the consumer to find those. I think things like local inventory, curbside pickup, enabling these kinds of things, I think are hugely important. There's been lots of discussion of that. But I think there's also, as we move further into these things, there needs to be a lot more optimization opportunity around each of these. Through much of 2020, for many merchants, it was about how do I just stand these things up? How do I get them enabled to begin with? How do I stand up curbside pickup, for example? As we're now moving forward, and it's becoming an increasing part of the business, how do I optimize those things? How do I make sure that the customers have a great experience around that? Or what's my broader service offering around those things? Or how does my value proposition evolve if my customers connecting with me both digitally as well as physically? I think these are all, each business is going to find their own different answer to these things, and answer it in their own unique way. And our part of it is focusing on what can we do to enable each business to, as Mary Ellen was describing, bring their value propositions forward, make it simple and easy for them to do that in a digital environment to connect with the consumer. So I think this is, it's evolving rapidly for the consumer, for the merchant, and then on our side of it, we're focused on making sure we meet them with tool sets that help enable that. Particularly with great partners like BigCommerce that are equally committed to that mission.
Well, that's great to hear because I think you just sort of gave me the segue where I want to talk about, right? We're both technology providers to merchants in the e-commerce space, coming to it with sort of great synergies. But obviously with what you've said twice now is about that acceleration of commerce, the 10-year acceleration has sort of just exploded because of the pandemic. What have you all had to do? Look, there's my Texan accent coming into it. What have you all had to do to adjust your teams, right? To adjust your strategy? What is your team working on, right? It's got to have been shaped by the enormity of the task and the request or the requirements or the needs of these small, mid-size, even large-scale enterprises. What have you been doing?
Yeah, it's absolutely had a huge impact on our activities. I think we've had strategies around these things that have been enduring. That we had sent out even ahead of the pandemic. As the pandemic happened, the urgency around those things obviously increased for all of us, and we wanted to make sure to to be there to help our partners to meet the consumer as they were shifting. So hugely impactful, to our efforts. A few things I'd note. First of all, just how big is that opportunity to meet consumers. Particularly across our various surfaces at Google, we now see people shopping across Google more than 1 billion times each day, and so we want to make sure that as you think on that scale of 1 billion plus daily active users, in a shopping context, we want to make sure that when those people come to Google, they're able to find all the best products, all the best value propositions from the widest range of merchants, so that they have just as much choice in the digital world, or ideally more choice even in the digital world, than what they had in the physical world. And so that's why you saw last year we took some pretty major steps toward building a free and open ecosystem, making it easier for retailers of all sizes to bring their full inventory to our platforms and connect with consumers at scale, independent of having to pay for those things. So that was a major shift for us, a major acceleration of our efforts. And then the other thing that you saw us really double down on last year was doing a lot of work with digital commerce players like BigCommerce, so that we could integrate with the others in the ecosystem who are serving merchants that are trying to adapt and trying to make these changes. That way, we could make it as simple for a business to get on Google as possible, and do that by working with their platform of choice, so that that business can work with their platform of choice, their commerce provider of choice, to easily have their information appear across our surfaces, whether that's search, shopping, image search, YouTube. We really want to make it easy for those merchants to meet the user where they are on our surfaces. And we've seen really great progress across those things. Businesses can now list their products for free on our shopping tab across 48 countries around the world. We've eliminated commission fees for buy on Google. We've started to bring those things to our main search results page. And we've seen that as it's happening, consumers are really responding to the greater breadth of inventory they're seeing from that wider range of sellers. When we made those changes, we saw a 50% lift in clicks from those changes. And importantly, that lift in clicks, we saw that it disproportionately, while it benefited merchants of every size, we saw that it disproportionately benefited small and mid-sized players. So really helping the consumer to connect with that broader set of merchants that they might not have otherwise discovered. So that was really, really encouraging for us. And so I think that data says, we're on the right track with those things. The partnerships, like what we're doing with BigCommerce and letting merchants use their commerce platform of choice, I think that's making it easier, and consumers are really resonating with that greater breadth of choice.
That's really interesting information there in stats, and I love the increase in clicks and the size, everything that you're doing for a merchant to help them there. But, Mary Ellen, a question for you on this then is, do you think businesses that your teams tend to work with, right, on the success side, are starting to see the urgency of really tapping into some of these new solutions to take advantage of it and start to see some of the benefits themselves that Bill just listed out?
Yeah. We've talked about a couple of key areas. We talked about consumer behaviors are changing so quickly, which is impacting category and content strategies. So, new tools we've added. So, for example, retail trends, and so that we can actually help small merchants know what the trending categories are. And we're seeing, just look at masks. Masks was, didn't exist 18 months ago and then became, a top selling category along with a lot of other items. And we've seen very, very agile merchants change their whole assortment planning based on looking at online retailing trends. So these are the type of ancillary services and insights that we can provide merchants that really help them work through their entire strategy, from assortment to content planning, supply chain, et cetera. That's just one example of, when we're trying to make not just, broader assortment available, but also kind of timely and what's most relevant.
Bill, anything to add on that?
No, I just say, it's for me personally, it's really inspiring to hear, these kinds of success stories, and really adapting with the merchants. We've been making changes, on our side for these things, and as Mary Ellen talks about how merchants are adapting, so rapidly. It's just again, as a serial entrepreneur and coming from a small business family, those things are quite inspiring to me, because I know that for all the folks out there that are building those businesses, it's not been easy, and even the ones that have seen success have had to work really, really hard to make that success possible. So we take, it's inspiring. We also see that all those improvements, as impactful as they've been, whether it's changes we've made, on the user experience for merchants to come on board easier, to advertise more easily, as much as we've done on all those things, we also see there's so much more to do. There's so much more potential for innovation on these things moving forward. And again, it's just every one of these examples where we can do our part to help merchants thrive and adapt and succeed. It's certainly why I jump up out of bed in the morning to come in and work on these things.
But data is key, and I talk about it here at BigCommerce as well. Data gives us the insights. It helps merchants with the insights. It helps us make our business decisions, right? So companies are always and increasingly always turning to data to drive innovation. It's become a top priority to leverage that data for these actionable insights, as we can go ahead and call it, in the decision-making processes. So what are some of the ways that Google is now helping merchants and business owners leverage the data that they have and actually turn that into insights that can be actionable and they can actually go do something with?
Yeah, and it's a fantastic question. And I think it's top of mind for most, if not all, merchants, in a place where we think there's a lot we can do to help. So one of those that I'm quite excited to call out is that since BigCommerce and Google have such a great partnership, BigCommerce merchants can use Google Cloud's BigQuery, which consolidates all product and marketing data into a single place, and Google's recommendations API gives shoppers personalized recommendations based on similar shoppers and past purchases. So I think that's a really fantastic one, a great example of the value of the partnership with BigCommerce and the things we can do together there. A few others I'd call out. Merchants can also use the bestseller report, which shows what shows you the most popular brands and products used in shopping ads and free listings, as well as whether or not you currently carry them in your product feed. Another tool is the price competitiveness report, which shows how other retailers are pricing the same products that you sell, and provides guidance when you're bidding on ads and pricing your products. And both of these reports can be found in the Google Merchant Center. So we think these are all examples of how aggregate data that we bring across the industry, we can bring insights to your business based on what we see in aggregate across the industry to help you make well-informed decisions for what's going to be right for your business.
I mean, I will talk about an announcement for Google Merchant Center in a second, but I'll just say that if you're a merchant of BigCommerce today and you're not using Google BigQuery, you need to, right? Because you can combine the power of BigQuery and this recommendations API that Bill just talked about to sort of give your shoppers more personalized recommendations. It is going to be really beneficial for your business, and you're going to get more orders, basically, is the answer to that, and you're going to keep that customer coming back to more. So, I did mention Google Merchant Center. You mentioned it as well, Bill, and this is absolutely the perfect time for me to share our big news, which is that we're excited to announce that in the coming weeks, Google and BigCommerce will be launching a new native integration that provides easy access to Google's Merchant Center and will allow BigCommerce merchants to have their products easily shown across Google, allowing them to get on Google for free and through ads, providing more opportunities to get discovered and opening up new ways to build their brands and win customers over. And this integration will help our incredible merchants tap into new channels and grow their businesses with simplified journeys so they can focus on the things that matter, like growing their business, like you both are doing today and have done in the past. So, Bill, any comments on that sort of announcement?
So obviously, we're really excited to work with BigCommerce and the 60,000 plus merchants that you work with. Together, we want to bring tools and technology that will drive success for that entire group. And the native integration with BigCommerce will make it even easier for merchants to leverage free listings and smart shopping campaigns to drive success. We've talked about how impactful we believe that can be. And a few things to note that the new integration will automatically sync your BigCommerce store data with Google, making it quick and easy to get started. Any changes you make to your products on your store with BigCommerce are automatically reflected in Google, which makes it easy to keep your ads up to date, and you don't need to worry about showing outdated product information, given the sync with between BigCommerce and Google. And you can do the setup directly within BigCommerce. And once your campaign is live, you can track your performance, gain insights, and make changes within the BigCommerce platform. So you don't need to spend time navigating across multiple platforms. So again, really excited about the work with BigCommerce on that and what we think together we can do to enable 60,000 plus merchants on the BigCommerce platform to reach 1 billion plus daily active users on our shopping experiences. So again, very excited that we get to announce that together.
Yeah, and I love the fact, Bill, that product data is syncing automatically and that merchants don't have to leave the BigCommerce platform to run their campaigns, track performance. It's just going to be incredible for merchants. I know we're sort of running down the time on this, so let's sort of get towards the end of it. Those have been some really helpful insights for our merchants, but to close, and I know I've ignored you a little bit here, Mary Ellen.
Oh, don't worry. I'm excited to talk about the product integration.
Well, I appreciate the time and the context that you've added to it, but I'd like to ask you both sort of a final question, right? As we're looking forward towards the end of 2021, and based off of what you've learned from last year, 2020, a little bit of this year as well, what's your top tip for merchants as they continue to navigate through the remainder of 2021 and hopefully something to look forward to in 2022? So Mary Ellen, I'll reach over to you first. What is your looking forward statement?
Yeah, change is inevitable. And I think if this last year has taught us anything, there can be real silver linings if you're agile and you're using all of the tools to get the insights on consumer behavior and on demand. So, using those insights to look at your content strategy, your merchandising strategy, your assortment planning can be incredibly valuable. And I think that's going to help retailers have really strong performance going into 2022.
Yeah, building off of Mary Ellen's points there, I would say for merchants, building deeper engagement with your customers. It sounds like a simple thing to say, but I think in a digital environment, it's actually more important than ever to think about how you're building those relationships and engagements with your customers. Related to that, I'd say own your own story in your customer experience, leveraging the digital tools available to you, but know that you still have your own story and your own experience to build on those things. And then finally, I would just say, building across platforms is critically important, as nobody wants to be in a world where there's sort of only one place to buy things. I think this point of saying, how do you meet the user where they are, making sure you're showing up where they are, so those consumers have choice and you're able to connect with those customers. I think critically important for all of us that are building for the retail community to keep in mind.
Great. Well, listen, I want to thank you both. I think this has been incredibly insightful for me in gaining knowledge through this conversation. It's wonderful to have a great partner in Google with BigCommerce. So Mary Ellen, Bill, thank you for your time. And for those tuning in, be sure to check out more Make It Big sessions and share what you've learned on social. And don't forget to tag us at BigCommerce. Until we meet in person and can see each other, I want to thank you, and I really want to thank you for the insights and the relationship between BigCommerce and Google. And to all our merchants, good luck out there. There are opportunities ahead, and it's going to be a fantastic end of year and an awesome 22 in my mind. So thank you both. Thank you, Mary Ellen. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Megan.
Thanks, Megan.